Hey, well, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Collision Live, coming at you a few minutes later than normal. Turns out that the meta version of Facebook is just as frustrating to use as the normal OG Facebook. But here we are, Daniel at the desk, as always, and joined at the table by the secular worldly entertainment to my cheap Christian knockoff alternative, Mr. Samuel David Camp. What is up?
Oh, not too much. It's always good to be with you. I spent the weekend in the Smoky Mountains and sound like I've been smoking, but that's just because my 2-year-old had a cold and now I did. So
yeah, Sam's been sick for it feels like the last 3 or 4 Collision Live episodes. Hey, but as long as you get it out of your system
eventually
before Christmas.
I did test. It's not
it's not the Rona.
It's certainly not, no. So.
But we're excited to be here as we always are. Thanks for joining us, especially those of you that waited and joined us live, even though we're starting late, for another fun episode talking about some stuff that I think is going to be fun to dig into, to dialogue about, like we do every week, just looking at culture from a Christian perspective and how do we navigate it, how do we contribute to it, how do we critique it, and just really how do we just sort of be Christians in the world and culture that we're sent to. So I got some interesting stuff that we're going to be talking about. Encourage you guys to share your own thoughts and opinions in the comment sections, wherever you're watching us from. But to jump right into it first, our first segment, we have pop culture news. So a couple of things that going on this week in culture just to be aware of, or to be excited for, or worried about, depending on what it is. Maybe the biggest one, we had a Disney Plus Day. This has been hyped for months. This big extravaganza for Disney Plus, going to be revealing all their content. Turns out it was a much to do about nothing. Not a whole lot of stuff was announced in this. It's just like a Twitter thread for an hour of a bunch of their B-level property stuff. But hey, it's marketing and publicity. Probably the biggest stuff that, at least for me, that came out of the Disney Plus Day, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, their first kind of teaser sizzle reel. So it's not like a trailer, just showing some concept art and the characters talking about how it's going to be so awesome and all that stuff, which was enough to get me excited. I am totally on board with this show, even though I wasn't originally. MCU stuff, tons of it. There's a never-ending flood of MCU stuff. I saw one that's MC Marvel's Zombies, which just shows how far down the barrel they have reached with that show. And Willow, again, it was more like a behind-the-scenes stuff, but just a reminder that there's a Willow show coming out, and
which I know you're very excited about.
9-year-old me has never been more excited for anything. Star Wars didn't make much of an appearance besides Kenobi, but the Rogue Squadron movie, this is by the one that was supposed to be directed by Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman fame, has been delayed. Don't know how long. It seems maybe indefinitely. Creative differences, which has become sort of the staple of Star Wars since it's come back. Ridley Scott is sort of the latest of these sort of grumpy old school directors that have lots to say about popular modern superhero movies, referring to superhero movies as boring as bleep, some stuff that we can't say on a Christian entertainment live stream. And maybe the last thing, just kind of staying on brand with the MCU and superheroes, the Marvel exec announced, which I think everyone assumed, that Chadwick Boseman, who tragically passed away, that his character in Black Panther will not be recast. They're just going to rework the story to accommodate him, which always made the most sense. It never made sense to recast him, but now we have confirmation of that. But any of that stuff stand out to you, or excite you?
I'm here for all the Star Wars related stuff, so that's always it's always exciting to get more of that on the docket coming up. So,
but maybe not coming up as soon as we would have wanted.
But the always delayed, it seems. So we'll see. We'll hold our breath until we find out for sure when all that stuff's coming.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't put it in the list, but Wheel of Time show, I've been excited about that. I'm a fantasy geek.
Yeah, that's coming out
so that's coming out I think on Friday, first 3 episodes. Yeah. So I'll be making my wife sit through that with me and pointing, no, that's not like the book. They changed that.
I'll watch it and no difference.
So I will be that person.
I'll be confused.
But and we are entering like the end of the December month and stuff for movies is always a big one for sort of like the second summer season. So there is a lot of stuff coming up, which as a pop culture person makes me excited. But one of the things that doesn't always make me excited is Christian alternatives to secular culture, if you will. Apparently, Facebook thinks that it does make me excited because for no reason that I can figure out, I've been bombarded with ads lately for these types of products. I don't know how the algorithm picked me up that I would be the target audience for this. And the one that kind of stood out to me and it's got me thinking is a nativity escape room. You got to unravel the mysteries of Jesus's birth. And again, I think maybe it's a cool idea. I haven't done it. It seems like it could be a cool tool. It could, make it fun. My initial reaction is just, a little cringe, but it's definitely not the worst of these sort of alternative things. In some ways, it's almost sort of the Christian alternative stuff has become a bit of like a joke, like the classic one, at least for me, is Sunday School Musical. When the height of the High School Musical craze and phenomenon, it didn't take us long to it's just like that, but at Sunday school, and it's just sort of for almost anything kind of in the world and secular pop culture, kind of mainstream pop culture, you usually don't have to look all that far to find like the baptized version of it. Like,
are we gonna get a sanctified things?
Yeah, we'll wait for the Christian version of this, so that we could kind of talk about that. And even I think in our thumbnail, when I was listing this topic, listed as the good, the bad, the ugly of Christian alternatives, because I think there is good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
In this isn't just this is a horrible thing. There's good stuff to it. But why don't you get us started in this conversation? What about these Christian alternatives? Like, is it a good thing? Is it just pure cringe? Like, what do we do with this?
Well, yeah. So I think there's quite a few things that could be said about this, but one, I think sort of just on the face of it, a lot of it just seems a bit, I don't want to say lazy, but not necessarily creative. It's like, hey, look, everyone loves this thing, like High School Musical. Let's Christianize it, and, we'll make a lot of money for Christians to watch it. And so, maybe the more cynical take is that it's kind of lazy creatively and also kind of just a way to make money for the people who produce this. But then on the other side, it's I think as parents, you can maybe understand some of this a little bit more, because if you just want to give your kids the iPad or whatever and let them watch some shows or some movies, then you can feel better knowing that it's some like Christian alternative to YouTube or Netflix or whatever, and they're not gonna accidentally like stumble upon something that's just gonna open a whole can of worms that you definitely don't want them seeing. So I can get it from that standpoint, but generally speaking, it's pretty cringe, I will say.
Yeah, you can definitely see the justification for it, especially as I think even my own opinions of some of the alternative stuff has been changed a bit since I became a parent.
Yeah.
Since I had to have my kids trying to navigate through some of these like entertainment choices. But yeah, I think you are right. It is very maybe the best word is often like reactionary. It's sort of like you kind of wait back creatively and see what's popular, and then by the time you make it, usually that thing isn't necessarily as popular, and you've sort of moved on. I was looking up. I don't know if you were familiar with there's a group I remember when I was like in youth group, apologetics with like an X. And it was like a musical group, and they do like covers of like the world songs, but they change all the. In some ways, I don't know if it was like an intentionally spoof or if it just unintentionally kind of spoof, kind of like a Weird Al sort of thing. But like they would, so like instead of like Slim Shady by Eminem, you'd have like I'm the real sin savior. It's like very like I don't know if it was tongue in cheek. I think somewhat, it was. But it was sort of like this way of like, hey, here's these cool songs. But what if we kept the beats and stuff, but we just made it like all about
Like
Sunday school and like Noah and the Ark and like some of that. And it is. It's very. It becomes very kind of reactionary. It's not.
Yeah.
It's in some ways it's like we don't want to be driven or defined by the world and stuff. But you end up being like almost entirely driven by just sort of whatever they're doing. And I think, if we were honest, fully honest, setting aside some of the garbage content in the entertainment, like probably never, 0 out of 100 times is the alternative kind of knockoff version ever better or at anywhere close like the quality of the...
I don't know. Amish Paradise was a really good song, I will say.
Is that an actual thing?
Yeah, that's a Weird Al song.
Oh.
It's his knockoff of Gangster's Paradise. So, just saying, there are some things that the knockoff could maybe be better, but probably never.
And I think and some of it too is, like I said, I think the reasons for it, I think there's probably lots of reasons. Fear of like being exposed to stuff that's bad. Some's just frustration. I know my kids have, take an iPad, go watch something on Netflix, and like you don't know what's going to come. Like you get all these sort of very worldly philosophies just shoved down their throats, and it seems like nothing is off limits now. Like so, as a father, some of that's like, hey, maybe it's better just to I know that they're going to be, it might be bad quality, but at least it's going to be biblical and safe. And it's not just going to be some, very kind of pushy kind of message and stuff. So I get like the justification of it, but I do think this, in some ways it kind of reinforces this, I guess, mindset or like approach to culture that's very kind of us and them and sacred, secular and divide and almost like kind of fosters this mentality of like this subculture that Christians, we can kind of have all the things like the world, but we don't actually have to like be in the world or engage in the world. Like we just sort of make our own baptized versions and like stay in our in our monastery in the mountaintops. And I don't think that's a healthy, I guess, or even like what the Bible sort of sets out as the way we're supposed to approach culture.
Yeah, well, and I think if you think back again, like to some of the classic culture making pieces of art, when you think of like music and you think of like statues and paintings, and some of the greatest artwork in history was, I mean, you could technically maybe say it's baptized because it was like created for / and or by the church, and it turns out to be some of the greatest, like standing the test of time sort of artworks, and so I think that the church is capable of creating incredible art, but I think it's kind of been lost along the way. I think we have sort of retreated into more of a reactionary footing, and we just want to, we're scared that the youth of today are going to just run off, and be in the world and neglect their upbringing, and so we just want to sort of frantically make something that'll appease them for a little while and it not have all the garbage that the world has to offer, which I can understand that maybe motivation, but ultimately it's like the end result of that is just poor quality, and like you're if you're doing it for the kids, I think ultimately you're still not getting the result that you're aiming at.
Yeah, and I think you entice them. I think like if you think like an 11-year-old boy is gonna just be satisfied with like Bible Man or super apostle or something like because you don't want to deal with some of the more secular stuff and like the mainstream comic book movies. Like in some ways you're almost making that more appealing because it's here's all this really well done stories and stuff, and then here's sort of our kind of uncreative, kind of cheesy story
knockoff version of it.
Is going to drive them.
Well, and I think also I think it all, like if you look at it from more of a parenting standpoint, it kind of maybe robs you and your kids of actually having those conversations. That, I mean, not that you need to be like exposing your kids to like awful stuff, but if your whole like MO is trying to avoid everything, then you're never actually going to have those hard conversations with your kids.
Yeah, or even just teaching kids discernment. Like that if there's sort of like the protecting side of it, and I think there's that's definitely a very needed element of the kind of cultural engagement. But like if the decision just becomes from the very start, like, you know, anything from the world is bad, like only art if it's made by, then you don't ever kind of disciple or walk with, you know, people to be discerning, to
right,
hey,
because eventually they're going to be adults and like they're going to make those decisions anyways. And so it's like, have you prepared them to make those decisions as adults, or is it just, well, if it's not rubber stamped by the church, then I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and I think and again, the verse is not, it's obviously not speaking directly to like entertainment stuff, but Revelation 21:5. This is, you know, kind of at the end. This is Jesus, the holy city, recreation. So then he who sat on the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." And obviously, he wasn't just referring to like artistic genres and stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think like the staple of like the kind of distinction of just what Jesus did on earth was, it was always about new, like creating new things. It wasn't about just trying to like, you know, set up his own, like, here's my Christian Roman Empire. Like, you know, it's separate, it's different. It's not paying, it's doing new things. And I think, you know, as the church, I think it does present a bad image if we're so defined by just kind of trying to repackage and like have our feet in both worlds, and not defined by, hey, we're just making new stuff that's really cool, that's creative. But let us know what you guys think. If you guys have any favorite Christian alternatives, Jordan says the Magna Bible. Doesn't surprise me that thing exists. But let us know anything that you remember watching. Maybe some that was actually good, that you say, hey, this is actually just as good as sort of what it's compared to. I can't think of any of those on top of my own head, but I'm sure they do exist. But something that I can remember and speak of off the top of my head is something that is quite near and dear to my own heart. And I will begin into this in our next segment of Host Corner.
That video always makes me laugh. Like a little
that
metal.
sums me up for better and probably mostly for worse. But for those, any of you guys that have been following the Collision for a while, know that they're, you know, my interests are somewhat limited. I have my things that I very much enjoy: Jaws, Lord of the Rings, but definitely making the upper echelon of my interest is metal music. I am a complete metalhead. I'm raising my kids to be metalheads like a good father that I am. So I thought I have a minute of a forced audience, and I have Sam here required to be on the desk. So I would spend my minute talking about metal. So metal, I think oftentimes when people think of, you know, when I tell people I just listen to metal, I think people have a very limited in mind of like, what is metal? Usually it's sort of this screaming music is one, you know, kind of this real death metal, angry music, which is not true. That metal is actually one of the most diverse genres that are out there. It's sort of like cranberry. You know, you can add cranberry into all the other juices. It's dipped its toe into many other genres. A couple years ago, Spotify, based on all their songs in there, did a little survey and found that there were 93 different metal genres listed on Spotify. They also found that metal fans, out of all the genres, are the most loyal to their one genre, which maybe just means that they're have the least amount of range. But here's a couple genres that I personally enjoy. You have power metal. You have symphonic metal, oftentimes with like melodic opera voice. You have speed metal. You have folk metal with traditional folk instruments. You have thrash metal. You have neoclassical metal, which brings in a lot of the classical scales and music, incorporates that into metal. I know I'm out of time, but we also have gothic metal. We have death metal. We have melodic death metal. We have progressive metal. And even within those genres, like power metal, you have the European power metal. You have the American power metal, which is more kind of grungy and less melodic. So all that to say is that before you just write off a metalhead as being closed-minded, we might be closed-minded, but metal is a very diverse genre that can adapt to so many different things, and is one of the reasons why it is the best musical genre out there.
Well, I think we've been thoroughly schooled in the great and varied ways that one can enjoy metal. So I'll definitely take that under consideration in my next playlist.
Yeah, so
selection.
Perhaps your playlists at home have just been having a neoclassical metal sized hole that needs to be filled. And hey, let me know. I can recommend you some bands for all of those genres and continue to crusade for the metal. But speaking of crusades and things and joining causes regarding music, one of the kind of the biggest or it's been kind of more newsy, I guess, stories that's been going on lately is the whole the Free Britney movement. Britney Spears, this has been going on for a while, but it's kind of reached its peak in the last week. As again, we're not going to get into all the nitty gritty of this specific circumstance. It's complicated. There's a lot going on, and we're not a gossip, celebrity gossip live stream. But I do think that sort of some of as I've been kind of following this story, and I think a lot of what's happening is great. All power to Britney, but it's sort of, I don't know, it's made me think a little bit on like a wider scale of just why do we, like as people, why are we so obsessed with like celebrity culture? Like you have people that are, it's like, the Free Britney movement is like, it's like the end of World War II or something. People are just, this is their moment, they're crying.
Spilling into the streets.
It is, and you see that even in more trivial cases, like with like celebrity breakups. Like I know Chris Pratt's been in the news for in some of his former marriage and stuff. And like people are like emotionally like they are like wrecked when they're, some celebrity couple, that were so in love, didn't make it to the 7th month of their relationship. And
R.I.P. Brangelina.
Yeah, that's still, people still get asked about that. People are so invested. So I thought we could just talk about that a bit. Like why, I think there's tons of reasons probably why, but kind of in coming at it sort of as a Christian, like what does that say about society and just, us as people, that we're just so drawn to these people that are very removed from us. We don't know personally, but we are very much like, living and dying through these people. Like, why are you so obsessed with like the Kardashians and some of these celebrities? Like,
well, that's probably an entirely different episode that we'll unpack at a later date. But to get back to the obsession with celebrity culture, I mean, I think there's a lot of things at play. I think one, I think it sort of taps into like the human need to have and belong to a tribe. And so I think not just with celebrity culture, but you see this with like, sports teams, say metal genres, whatever it may be. I think there's just this human need to belong to something that's bigger than yourself. And I think people find that in like sort of just following step by step, minute by minute, some celebrity's life, and they get invested in it. And one, I think, is to kind of belong to like, oh, I'm team Britney, or I'm, team Angelina, or whoever. And then at the other side of it, I think it's also people like to live sort of vicariously through the rich and the famous. And I think that's kind of happened ever since there's been the rich and the famous. I think people have kind of, hung on to the life that they live. They just think, oh, that could be me. Or, if it's, thinking of like somebody like Taylor Swift, who writes songs that really speak to your heart, and you feel like that person understands what you're going through. And so you sort of grab onto that, and you sort of feel like they're your person. They sort of represent all of the things that you believe in, or the things that you, want to see happen in the world. And so I think a lot of it is sort of appealing to our sort of base nature, but also just to sort of, we want to be, I think everybody sort of secretly wants to be rich and famous. And if they can't be, then, if they have a lot of time on their hands, they're going to follow these celebrities, and they sort of can kind of live their life through them.
Because it really is in a lot of ways like a form of like idolatry. I get a little squeamish when I think sometimes we throw around the like, we have all these, everything's a god or religion, atheism or religion. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes we're a little like too fast and loose with making everything like that. But you see some of that with like this celebrity, where they become like this, almost like an avatar of like, they represent, it's not just a person, it's like the whole, what they represent. And like, which is why like, when people change, like with the whole, Billie Eilish, and like, all of a sudden she like is wearing like more revealing clothes and not the baggy hoodies and stuff, like there's just this like big outpouring of outrage and like anger towards her, because I think like she represented something, and she wasn't like a person anymore. It was like she was like this embodiment of maybe more modesty or different things. And when it turns out that she changes her mind, or she just doesn't feel like that anymore, she never liked it, or whatever the case is, then it becomes like, how dare you, and you owe it to us to, and I think you see that with, beyond just like something like modesty or dress, like this sort of in general, like people become like, they represent something to us that we can kind of latch on to. And it becomes sort of, you're saying, a team sport. Like, this is our guy, and that person can switch. Chris Pratt has sort of become the, our guy as Christians, when it came out. And then now you see a lot of like, just the main culture kind of turning against him and kind of villainizing him because he's sort of left that Hollywood team. And so I think there is some level, like I think you're right. I think a lot of it is just kind of dumb escapism of, hey, I don't have anything going on really in my life right now, and so I'm gonna just follow the drama of this person is feuding with this other celebrity, and just sort of like these trashy gossip magazine style stuff. So I think there is some of just that, like that's like a show like The Bachelor, some of those things where it's like it's just diverting kind of entertainment stuff. But I do think like at a deeper level, there is more to it than just escapism. Like I think it does sort of speak to like, it's we want to be part of a cause and support something without really having to do anything about it.
Well, and I think especially when celebrities now, like they have their platforms and whatever, and they have social media, so they can kind of stand up for whatever they believe in, or they, like you said, they kind of become an icon for X, Y, and Z. So I think a great example of this is somebody like Adele, who sort of represented someone who could be successful and, wasn't this sort of skinny pop version of whatever, cultures said that a famous award-winning singer should be. And so I think people latched on to her for that. And then she goes and like gets healthy and like loses some weight. And it's like, oh, like, you betrayed us, and so like people get upset at her because, well, wait a second, you represented this other thing, and so there becomes a dehumanizing of these celebrities, which at the end of the day, I think we all forget that like celebrities are actual people, and they're humans on the other side of whatever vitriol you have for them one way or the other, and I think we just sort of forget that they're people as well who changed, because it's like, I can change, but my celebrity crush can't change, or whoever, whatever.
And that's can't even say, we're not going to get, like I said, not going to get into like the details of just like the Free Britney movement and stuff. I know that's a loaded thing, but some of the irony is like, even of that, is a lot of the kind of the motivation or the start of that was sort of pushing back kind of this realization of this, like how like dehumanizing society is to these celebrities, and I guess a lot of the awful stuff that someone like a young female went through. But it's almost like quickly that becomes like the motivation, but it quickly becomes sort of another version of that, where like you just have now she represents this, and you have all these people sort of living vicariously through her, and this big movement that they're not really doing anything. It's just sort of they're following her every step and like dissecting everything, and it's like you're just sort of doing a different version.
Yeah, and I just wonder too, like is part of it just like humans weren't meant to be famous? Like like there's some, like, no matter what happens, like I just, when people like at the level of Britney, like you just don't go through that and not just like lose your marbles. You know what I mean? Like I just wonder how like being famous, I just wonder, is that just unhealthy for both the person who's famous and the people who idolize them? Like I just, you kind of wonder, like, I don't know that we were ever really meant to have this thing called fame and celebrity happen. Like I know it's kind of been since the beginning of time in some ways, but like it's only like exponentially grown now with the internet. But it's
with
like
social media and like there's the ability to like have your your every thought broadcast to millions of people, and you end up saying some stuff you probably shouldn't say, and you get in trouble, and like It is. It is sort of a new, like, fame and fortune and all that is obviously not new. That's always, but I think some of, like, I guess the outworkings of that is new, and like the level of that, and I think even just the ability for people to to jump on board of these movements or get so invested when you can find all the scandalous details of their life on your phone instead of picking up that trashy magazine at the grocery store counter if you want to keep up with it. So I don't know, and I think Christians in a lot of ways are just as guilty as non-Christians in this. Like, I think they're almost just as guilty, or probably are just as guilty with this mainstream celebrities. Christians are super invested in all these details and shows, but I think even within like their own community, like the kind of the Christian community, you just sort of see this gravitation towards like making sort of idols of these people. And even if it's like some old like theologian author that's not the kind of person you would think of as a big celebrity famous person, like, you still sort of see it on Twitter and stuff, like they become this sort of representation of that sort of my approach to theology, or that's my cultural thing, and just sort of kind of tribing up to all these different
no, I think Christians are just as guilty of that, and they do it both in the broader culture, but also even within like church culture. Everybody kind of gets in their camps of theologians or of worship styles or worship leaders or whatever, and I just think it's sort of the inevitability of people who get success or get fame. Like I just think that's an inevitable outcome. You're gonna have people who just sort of latch on and want to be in that tribe, or that's my person, or whatever it is. And I think we would all do well to remember that, like, we have our own lives to live, and maybe let's not so heavily invest in someone else's life that you don't even know, even though it feels like you do because they sing songs that like speak to your heart or whatever. I don't know. Like I just think it can be. It's fine to have like we all have bands or people or celebrities or whatever that we really, really look up to or really like or just love what they do. But at the end of the day, I mean, like they're people who change, and they're people who have their own opinions, and it's like they don't like live to serve your like needs and like your voice in the world. And so I think I just think it'd be good to remember that from time to time as Christians.
And again, we've talked about that on this show too, just as far as like you just set yourself up for disappointment too, or the church oftentimes will be quick to claim, oh, that's on our team now, this is our person, they spoke out against this secular philosophy, so now they're our champion, and we need to put them on a stage, and they represent us, and oftentimes they're just not, I guess, mature enough to handle that, or they're just not as on board as we maybe thought they were, and like they say stuff or they do things and they're just human and don't live perfectly. You have a lot of these champions that fall and just end up leaving a lot of kind of devastation just because they were put in a position that they probably didn't even necessarily want to be put in. So again, I think there's tons for us as Christians to kind of to evaluate how invested we are in some of this. I think we should remember too, like, no one asked Sam to be a hero. He didn't ask for it. It's just the way
it was thrust upon me.
It was thrust, the hero that we.
I now must rise to the occasion.
The one we need, but not the one that we deserve. But let us know if you, how do you navigate that? How do you, are there people like Sam said? I look up to Tolkien, even though he's dead. I don't think there's anything wrong with having heroes or people that you look up to and admire and try and mimic in some ways. But just, I think even as Christians, we need to evaluate and not just assume that it's just the world makes idols, but we don't. I think we're all guilty of that. So the last part of our live stream this week at the Collision. It's been a transition time a bit, changing some stuff over, so we haven't had as much new like articles and stuff as we the last couple weeks. I never did get a chance to see the Eternals. At this point, I probably will just wait for it to come on Disney Plus, and maybe I'll still do a review. I don't know if anyone will be interested in a review at that point, but I'm still curious to see it, so I might as well. I think Ghostbusters: Afterlife comes out this Friday. I'm not a huge Ghostbusters person.
Speaking of heroes we didn't want but need.
Yeah, that we do need. But I did grow up watching the animated Ghostbusters show, which is quite terrifying. Tried to show my kids that not long ago, and probably gave them nightmares. But so the plan is that I'll be doing a review for that either this weekend or else early next week. But anything else for us that's going on with?
No, I don't. We've got some exciting changes coming up here at the Collision, and keep your stay posted for that. So
yeah, but, we're excited. Pretty soon we'll be introducing new logos, new branding, all that kind of stuff. A lot of fun stuff. And then, like we said last week, our new book is coming out probably in soon. Don't want to put a date on it, but in the next couple weeks maybe. So stay tuned for that. But most of you guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. And despite some of the delay, hope you guys are excited for Thanksgiving and entering the Christmas season. There's no judgment from us if you decide to decorate before Thanksgiving. You do you. But most of you guys, stay safe and continue to collide with the world for Christ.